Hey Motive Nation, Nick Parr here with you again from Grand Rapids, Michigan at lovely Spectrum Lanes, and today I'm going to be giving you some spare tips to improve your spare game. This is one of the most critical things in our sport that'll take you to the next level as far as your average, just competition and feeling more comfortable on the lanes is when you know that you have a good spare game no matter where you go, no matter what the pattern, anything like that. So there's a couple key topics that I want to talk about as far as your hand position at your spares, if you use a plastic ball or if you don't. Obviously that's totally up to you what you're more comfortable with, but you just got to find out what you're comfortable with and what you can repeat. Speaking of repetition, having a pre-shot routine in your spares, just like your strike ball, that is huge. That you're just going up there like you've done it 100,000 times before and just hitting a target. Speaking of targeting, finding a focal point to rotate your spares around. For me, you'll see that 20, middle arrow, is my focal point. And then I just move my feet accordingly depending on the angle that I need to get the object pin. All right, so since we're talking about spares, obviously I brought a sniper. I typically don't use a sniper. That's just me personally. I figured out a way to get my wrist flat enough that I can use resin. That way I don't have to carry an extra ball in your bag. So I go to technically the last dot on most centers. This one has an extra dot, so be aware of that as well. So this would be 34 is where my feet are. I always line up with the right inside of my left foot. My target is 20. Doesn't mean that's where my ball will travel over, but my target is 20, and I draw the line right at the 10 pin. So then, kind of get that repetition down, and you can just set up, even without a ball, you can set up, kind of move your hips and your shoulders accordingly towards your target, and then you're just drawing a line all the way to the pin that you're trying to hit. So then my next shot will be at a 7 pin. So again, my target is still 20. But now my feet are at 16 with that inside right edge of my left foot because I want to go over the middle arrow to the left side, so I have to get more right side angle. And on a full rack, obviously, 10 pin, you miss it if you hit the 3 pin, and if you hit the 2 pin shooting at a 7, you miss it. So I would have made both of those there. So those are my key points for the outside pins. So now that I'm going to move shooting at a 6 pin, I've got to cut that angle down and be a little bit more direct. So I move my feet to right, which means I'm at 32, still aiming at 20, figuring out my shoulders. I would have made it, but it was a little left. But that's where a plastic ball comes into play because I knew it wasn't going to hook. Even though I missed it and kind of grabbed a little bit, plastic's not going to hook on the oil. It's not going to hook by. You see a lot of people out here hooking at left side spares because it's fun and you see your ball hook, but it's not the way to make spares by any means. So now I'm going to go for a 4 pin. Notice how I moved my feet to right as the object pin moved left from the 10 pin. So oppositely, I'm going to move my feet to left from my 16 board with my feet to 18 now to look at the 4 pin and go over 20. Just like that. So again, now if I want to do the same thing for a 2 pin or a 3 pin, my feet still move 2 towards the angle that I want to cut off. So again, I would move my feet to right if I want to shoot at a 3 pin from the same target on the lane at 20. And vice versa for shooting at a 2 pin. Now, that's not necessarily going to be the same for everybody. I know my personal moves are 2 boards depending on the pin. But my focal point is always 20. I'm always looking at middle arrow. So you got to figure out maybe when you're further left on the lane, maybe you need to draw your line at 25 to get that angle, maybe because of your drift or what your eyes see as comfortable. Play around with that on the lane. Like I said, it's going to be a little different for everyone, especially the board move with your feet. Maybe it's 3 boards for you, maybe it's 1. You just have to play around a little bit, get comfortable, see those angles for yourself. Okay, so now we'll take a look at using resin, which a lot of people do, or maybe a urethane ball, something that hooks a little bit, not a ton. So 10 pin, my feet are always in the same spot. My hand is a little weaker now. I'm more broken wristed, if you will, I use the thumb and kind of guide that towards my target, being the 10 pin, and draw that line through 20, or the 4th arrow. Get up there. Dead straight. I mean, my hand was very stable. I wasn't trying to hit it, rotate it, or anything like that. Try to just see myself go through all the way over my target, down the line to the 10 pin. Same thing from right side and left side spares. So I can move over here, still take my resin ball, stand on 16 with my feet, still aiming at 20 and using my thumb to kind of guide where I want a ball to go. Just like that. So that's something that you can play around with as well, with using a resin ball or maybe urethane ball. Just something that you know you can get stable with your hand, and it's not gonna move a whole lot of trying to hit it or anything like that. If you feel like your wrist is really one that wants to just collapse and hit a ball, definitely look into getting a plastic ball. You'll have much more room for error that way. If you feel like you can get there and throw it pretty firm, but be in control, not overthrow it, I would definitely look at being comfortable using a resin ball. So I hope these spare tips help you. Again, everybody's gonna have a little bit different spare game as far as what their moves are for certain pins, how they release their spare ball, what kind of spare ball they use, but no matter what, just make sure that you stick to your routine every time, especially a pre-shot routine. You're not just rushing up there because you get frustrated leaving a corner pin and you just throw it 100 miles an hour and oops, you missed it. Take your time, spares are very important. So if you feel like you can use plastic, resin, whatever, I want you to just feel comfortable at making sure you can hit a target and a spare. Hope this helps.